No audio, no demos. Uh, Everything's gonna go great. Yeah. No. Yeah. My name's Josh. I wanted to give kind of a talk today about a question or kind of a series of questions that I get a lot in practice, which is one, how do we train a model? How do we fine tune a model? But the question behind that is, should we? Should we pick something up from open source? We're seeing every day, these labs are putting out really great open source multimodal models, and the question is, okay, well, they're putting them out there for free. Can I just use them? Can I stop paying 11 Labs? Can I stop paying OpenAI? And so I wanna kind of talk about that because I've spent some time doing this. So really quick, this is kind of an insight on why I want to talk about open source AI. So I've been working in open source voice for a long while. Specifically, at Mozilla, if anybody remembers, there was this deep speech and common voice project that at the time was the most popular open source speech recognition toolkit. I've been cited a couple times, including in the OpenAI Whisper paper. And I have my own startup where we did text-to-speech, and that model that we released in open source became very popular. It still gets millions of downloads a month. And I do some advising for folks specifically in the voice AI space. And right now I'm working at Veris in New York, and we're doing simulation sandboxes for both text and voice agents. So yeah, specifically a lot of my background is in open source though. So the questions I get are, should we just host an open source model, right? We can get them, usually they're cheaper. People look at benchmarks and they look like they're pretty decent. And then another question is, hey, can we bring this in-house? Is that going to be something that we own, we fine-tune it, it becomes something that is proprietary to us, like this is our IP, right? And so I want to kind of, my default answer, I love open source, I really love open source. So my default answer is no, you should not. Not because open source is bad, but because people think that the model's out there, I can just pick it up and I can run with it. But the model is very much the beginning, right? Like everything else, all of the engineering burden, all of the total cost of ownership is really huge, especially if you're going to put something out there in front of your customers and it's going to have scale. So this is the default no, but I want to kind of break this down a little bit. Why? So the first question when you start thinking about should I use open source is what's your product, right? Like there's so many, we talk about voice AI in very broad terms, but when everybody says voice AI, they have something very different in their mind, right? A lot of people now, especially in 2026, they think about voice AI as a conversational agent where I'm talking to it over, I don't know, my browser or a phone call. It's talking back to me in real time. Maybe it's doing things for me, but the core of it is it's real time, human to computer interaction. So that's kind of the first question, and that's a kind of voice AI that's real time, and this is one place you really do not want to just start picking up open source models and trying to use it. Why? Because if you have any real-time application, anybody here who's done voice agents or anything that's human user facing in real time knows that latency is like the most important thing. I mean, we could have a fun discussion here about quality and latency and cost, right? Those are the three things. I would say you can actually give up a lot of quality if you have good latency. So that's the first question. The first gate is kind of how I think about it. If you have real time, that's one reason you don't want to use open source. On the other hand, if you have something that's really asynchronous, if you're transcribing Zoom calls, right? If you're transcribing people's meetings, and then you can, the team can wait for 24 hours before they get an overview, right? That's not real time, and that's an example where you could actually think about using something open source. So first one is real time, that's kind of latency bucket, right? And then we have quality. Just because maybe you can have something that's off the shelf open source that is good latency, you're going to probably hit quality issues, and this is something that you need to keep in mind. And a lot of times it boils down to not just priorities for the product at the company, but also capacity in terms of the team. So do you have the right team to put these things in production? So like I said, latency, for latency sensitive real-time applications, this is a really big gate and something you can't really compromise on. Quality is something that a lot of people come to me also and they say, hey, I'm using DeepGram, or I'm using OpenAI, or I'm using whatever speech-to-text provider API. And they say, well, my audio is different because I'm transcribing people who are speaking with this accent, or I'm transcribing people who are, factory workers, and the background is super, super noisy, right? And they're saying that, okay, well, my audio is really specific. I know something about it ahead of time. Can I start thinking about fine-tuning, pulling something off the shelf, open source, but then customizing it and then having it in-house? That's an area where you can actually justify. If you know you have a very, very clear, well-defined domain, then you can customize for that. But if you're just thinking, oh, my API bills are really expensive, that's not usually the best motivation, because you're going to have to catch up a lot in terms of engineering. And more so, if you think, a lot of people are also in this demo phase, right, with voice AI, agents in particular. It's like, okay, I work at this company, and the CEO is saying we're AI native, we need to do more AI. It's really easy to get a demo. You could put a really cool demo together, and somebody else was saying just today it takes 10 minutes to make a demo that works 90% of the time, but then the rest of the 10 minutes, the rest of the 10% is really hard, right? You can get a demo that looks really good. You go pitch it to your team internally, and then people get excited. They get excited and they start doing the cost calculations. How much is this? What are the unit economics? How much is this going to cost if all my users actually start using it? And they see this graph of the API bill just going like crazy high, and they can't afford it. And so before they even get to that point, they're like, we have to pull this in-house. Again, that's a bad idea. It's one thing to have a demo that's really cool, but my advice is always do the thing that's not going to scale. At least see if it's going to work. See how many of your users are actually going to use it before you put 5 engineers on a project that's going to last for whatever, 18 months. And another way to think about this is your product, if anybody in this room, as far as I know, is exception of a couple here, is not a core model company. Your product is consuming an API, right? It's a speech API. It might be multiple speech APIs, but your product is not the speech. The speech is enabling your product. Once you pull in the model, then you have a whole new product that you have to maintain. I think people underestimate this. Is like there is a reason why companies can just be API companies. That's all they do. They spend all their time making sure that the GPUs are running, making sure that latency is low, making sure that throughput is high. And they're doing that all for you, and they're charging, right? So if you have your own product and you're you're using somebody else's API, and then all of a sudden you create your own API, then you have two products you have to maintain, which at certain scales can be really, can make a lot of sense. But again, don't jump the gun. So in particular, I mean, this is kind of engineering issues you might hit, you will hit when you own your own API. But it's a lot more than just pick up a model because it's open source, right? So I mentioned earlier that there's capacity that you need internally when you're using open source AI models. There's actually two kinds of profiles that you might, well, there's two kinds of profiles when I talk about capacity. There's back-end folks, like if you have a model and you don't need to customize it, you're just like, hey, this model, I know it's going to be good. I can go get Gemma 4, I can go download it from Hugging Face, and I know it's really good. Maybe my task is actually not that difficult. So you don't need to do any fine-tuning. Quality bar is fine, latency is fine, but now you need to think about having the back-end developers, which you maybe already have, spending time on this instead of your core product. And the other side, if you're going to be fine-tuning, if you're going to be taking your data, right? Like let's say you've collected a bunch of data and you want to be training models, fine-tuning models, then you need the scientist. And both of those profiles are expensive, and in a lot of cities, they're hard to find. Let's say that you've gone through these kind of decision gates that I talked about earlier with, yes, we know that it's going to take capacity. Yes, we really want to own this in-house. Like you've gotten to the point, and then you're like, okay, I want to do fine-tuning. Like you're ready to go. And then they say, for voice in particular, okay, you have data, right? They say, yeah, we have whatever, 100,000 hours of audio. That's only half the data, actually. The other half is the transcripts, if that's what you want to be doing, is transcription, right? So data is not just one thing, and you're done. If you have a ton of data that could be super valuable to your company, you still need to go get annotators to actually go through the data, clean the data, label the data. Again, like I said, the talent, and then there's this whole different mindset, the patience here. Engineering for your normal product follows a typical software development lifecycle, where you have your engineers, they tell you, hey, it's going to take 2 weeks. Usually they're wrong, but they're not that wrong. It's like maybe 3 weeks, I don't know. But for fine-tuning, for training, you're working with scientists that are doing experiments. They're not doing software. And so a lot of times you won't even get timelines from these teams. They'll say, I'm working on it. We're doing experiments. And it sounds kind of absurd to anybody who doesn't come from that background. I mean, I remember coming from that background and going to a normal engineering team and working with those folks and explaining listen, I'm doing these experiments. I don't know when it's going to finish. I don't know if it's ever going to finish. It's just a very different kind of not just patience but acceptance you need from the management team, and sometimes it doesn't work with the company culture. But one nice thing with fine-tuning is that you can optimize all these three. They usually say, here's 3, pick 2. With fine-tuning, if you make it work, you can actually get all of these, which is very cool, because you can take a small model, have it perform as good or better than a big model, which is going to be faster and cost you less money. So kind of the holy grail here is if you do actually have your own data from your company, which is proprietary, and there's actually even another one over here, which is like data governance. Like you're not handing over your data to any other API provider, right? So let's say you've listened to this talk and you're still like, yes, I want to do it. I want to go, and if I haven't talked you out yet, this is the path. First thing you need to do is you need to benchmark. You need to know how are you doing today, right? Like, let's say you're using OpenAI, you're using Anthropic, whatever. You're using some APIs, and you're like, I want to do better. Well, what is better? How do you measure better, right? For speech models, that can be things like word error rates. It can be things like, for a voice agent, number of conversation turns, right? You have to have a measurement before you go out trying to improve it. And that is something that a lot of teams will just skip over. They're like, I'll start measuring once I actually implement the other option. And I do kind of A/B testing, but it's, yeah. So let's say you've got it measured, you know your metric, you know what you want to optimize. First thing you do, if you're thinking about switching, is do a managed hosting. Like, there's lots of providers out there. There's Hugging Face, there's Fireworks, there's Base 10, there's lots of people who will host open source models for you. And you still get an API. What it looks like from your point of view is I've just changed my APIs, except for it's an open source model. It's just I don't have to do anything with the development. And that's the way that you can do a very fast apples to apples comparison. Does this work for my product? From that point, then you can start thinking about, okay, it's working. I just want to make it cheaper. You self-host. Or it's working. Well, actually, yeah, you can't skip step 3, actually, because fine-tuning assumes that you are self-hosting, usually. So, I want to give a concrete kind of example of where open source actually can be really beneficial. And I think for people here in the speech domain and the voice domain, this will be interesting. If you're doing, like I mentioned, asynchronous workloads, like it's not real time. Let's say you're transcribing people's meetings after the fact, and they can wait for 24 hours. There's a really nice knob you can dial for speech recognition that's between latency and cost. So actually, if you are willing to really do slow speech recognition, you can run it on CPUs instead of GPUs and save a lot of money. It just takes, whatever, 5 times as long as the amount of audio. I know people doing this in production now. And with asynchronous, you don't have to worry about if there's a network connection issue, is my customer going to feel it, right? Another area, like I said, if you know, like I mentioned this earlier, if the narrow domain, if I know like my speech recognition needs to work really well in warehouses where there's these big tractors that are getting worked on, and that's the only place I care about, then you can get data for that, annotate it, fine tune, and then it works well for you. It might not work well for anybody else, but the thing is, by definition, the APIs that we're all using, like the off-the-shelf ones, they are built to work for everybody, which means it's not built for you. And so that's the kind of the mindset for fine-tuning is like, okay, I could use really great speech recognition from DeepGram, but it's really great for everybody. But I don't really care about speech recognition for everybody. I care about speech recognition for my customers. That's it, right? And then if you're in the fun group of core speech companies, then yes, IP, like if you own this, then that makes a lot of sense from a business point of view. So I finish up, happy to take questions or discussion. Yeah, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, this is how, but I hope that was useful.
It was definitely useful. Do I have questions? It's getting quiet. No? All right then. And I guess we'll connect.
Yep.
And
thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.